Hello and welcome to Spectrum News. My name is Xavier Roberts, coming to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom. Let's take a look at the headlines. President Tinubu hosts ECOWAS special meeting. Akwa Ibom State Governor Pastor Moino charges newly sworn-in ESCO members on effective service delivery. Plus, Trump vows to continue presidential campaign if sentenced. Details of these stories and more in a moment. First in the news, the political instability experienced in the Republic of Niger may have prompted an emergency meeting of ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government to be hosted by President. A test statement circulated by Special Advisor to the President on Special Duties, Communication and Strategy Delia Lake noted that the meeting comes up on Sunday in Abuja. Tinubu had initially condemned the current political situation in the neighboring country and promised that ECOWAS and the international community would do everything to defend democracy and ensure democratic governance continues to take firm root in the sub-region. He had also mandated the President of Republic of Benin, Patrice Talon, to visit Niger, only to learn of the military takeover of the country. Meanwhile, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris and United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, in separate telephone calls Thursday evening with President Tinubu, had affirmed their support of the U.S. and UN for the position taken by ECOWAS and the Nigerian leader to restore constitutional order in Niger Republic. In a related development, former President Muhammadu Buhari has expressed shock over the coup d'etat that ousted ex-Niger Republic President Bazoum. This was as Buhari expressed confidence in President Bola Tinubu's ability to resolve the crisis. Buhari prayed that Tinubu would be able to reverse the situation and ensure the safety of Bazoum and his family. Meanwhile, President Bola Tinubu has approved the appointment of a new management team for the Nigeria Customs Service. This is coming weeks after the president appointed Adewale Adeniyi as the acting Controller General of Customs and retired some of the management members of the service. In a statement signed by the National Public Relations Officer of the service, Abdullahi Maiwada, the appointees include 3 Deputy Controllers General and 3 Assistant Controllers General. He charged them to redouble efforts to ensure the service achieves greater heights in its mandates of revenue generation, suppression of smuggling and trade facilitation. In the meantime, President Bola Tinubu yesterday hailed Senate leader Senator Opeyemi Bamidele on the occasion of his 60th birthday. The president noted that the lawmaker representing Ekiti Central constituency rose to national prominence through steadfastness, loyalty, commitment to progressive politics. In a press statement signed by the State House Director of Information Abiodun Joye and made available to newsmen, Tinubu described Bamidele as a trusted ally and confidant. Senator Bamidele was a commissioner during Tinubu's administration as Lagos State Governor. In another development, Russian President Vladimir Putin has pledged closer ties with Nigeria and other African countries, assuring leaders in the continent that the European country was ready to partner African states to develop their energy, information, communication, education and health sectors, among others. This came as Vice President Kashim Shettima said Nigeria would partner with Russia to revive the aluminium smelter company of Nigeria, particularly by engaging with key stakeholders in the industry. Reports say they both spoke at the ongoing Russia-Africa Economic and Humanitarian Forum held in St. Petersburg, Russia. The summit was being attended by several African heads of states, including Shatima, who represented President Bola Tinubu, and President Emerson Mnangagwa of Zimbabwe. Away from that, the federal government has shifted the date for its new monthly pension payment for pensioners in the parastatals under the Ministry of Power and Transportation. Head of Corporate Communications at the Pension Transitional Arrangement Directorate PTAD, Wenga Ajayi, disclosed this in a statement. According to him, the July date earlier fixed for the commencement of the back-end computation project for pensioners has been adjusted to August 2023. He explained that the change in the implementation date became necessary to resolve all the logistics challenges that had impaired production and other issues. Meanwhile, the federal government has approved the payment of 25,000 naira of peculiar allowance for medical doctors and dentists in hospitals, medical centers, and clinics in the Federal Public Service. The approval was contained in a letter dated July 26, 2023, titled Accoutrement Allowance for Medical and Dental Doctors in Hospitals, Medical Centers, and Clinics in Federal MDAs. The president of the Nigerian Medical Association (NMA), Dr. Uche Ojima, said it awaited the full implementation of the agreements they had and explained that the association was grateful that the government had taken a step regarding one of its agreements. A letter announcing the allowance said that the federal government had approved the payment of an accoutrement allowance of 25,000 naira per quarter to medical and dental doctors in hospitals, medical centers, and clinics in the Federal Public Service, saying that the allowance is to be paid from the overhead budget. In the meantime, Senior Special Assistant SSA to the President on National Assembly Matters, Senator Abdullahi Gomal, says documentation for all the ministerial nominees have commenced, and Gomal told newsmen yesterday in Abuja that the nominees were expected to visit the office of the SSA, located at AB 25 Basement National Assembly Complex between July 28 and July 30. It would be recalled that the Senate had on Thursday received President Bola Tinubu's list of 28 ministerial nominees for screening and confirmation. From the Red Chambers now, where the Senate will on Monday commence the screening of the ministerial nominees submitted to it by President Bola Tinubu. Reports say the screening is just as indications emerged that the President will create new ministries and form his full cabinet in 2 weeks. Speaking shortly after the names of 28 nominees sent to the federal lawmakers were read on the floor by the President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, the Senate spokesperson Yemi Daramodu said the upper chamber has suspended all its activities to commence the screening immediately. Daramodu said screening will commence on Monday as the Senate has suspended all the rules to accommodate the screening of the nominees, which include suspending the proposed vacation slated for Thursday. Daramodu added that the screening will be done with no limitation of hours, 10 a.m. and 11 a.m., in the presence of Nigerians. Moving on now to the judiciary, where Justice Inyako of the Federal High Court Abuja has fixed October 25 for judgment in a suit filed by Senator Damubo Kachuwa against the Attorney General of the Federation AGF. The Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission ICPC, Department of State Services DSS, and the Nigerian Police Force. Bukachua is accusing the ICPC, DSS, and others of colluding with his political enemies to harass him following his valedictory comment on the floor of the Senate, which he said his political enemies continued to misrepresent. The ex-lawmaker, who is the husband of the immediate past president of a court of appeal, Kachua cited the June 15 letter of invitation sent to him by the ICPC over his comment on the floor of the Senate, which he said many had misinterpreted to mean that he had influenced his wife's handling of some case while she was the president of a court of appeal. He argued that as a serving senator, when he made the comment, he was by law immune to arrest or detention over any of his conduct, action, or speech on the floor of the Senate. In a separate development, 198 stranded Nigerians evacuated from Sudan arrived at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja. The 160 adults and 38 infants and children evacuees were evacuated by the National Emergency Management Agency (NEMA) from Port Sudan. They were airlifted by Taco Airline, a Sudanese-based airline. So far, the agency has successfully evacuated 2,858 from Port Sudan and Egypt. The Director General of NEMA, Mustafa Ahmed, explained why the evacuation process took longer than expected. He said the process was stalled because the crisis in Sudan escalated and the refusal of domestic airlines to go to Sudan. On security matters, troops of the Nigerian army have killed 59 terrorists in various military operations across the country. According to the defense headquarters, yesterday also rescued were 88 kidnapped victims taken hostage by suspected criminals. Briefing journalists in Abuja, the Director of Defense Media Operations, Major General Edward Buba, said 88 suspected criminals, 10 kidnappers, 20 gunmen, and 19 suspected oil thieves were apprehended during the process, though the time span of the operations were not specified. According to reports, a total number of 68 weapons and 1,364 ammunitions were recovered by the troops. Back here, Akwa Ibom State Governor Pastor Moino has charged the newly inaugurated members of the State Executive Council on effective implementation of their ministerial responsibilities. The governor, who gave the charge during the inaugural Executive Council meeting held at the State Esker Chambers Government House, Uyo, urged them to ensure that every item on the Arise agenda, which falls under their ministry, must be handled according to the timelines and objectives. Briefing Government House correspondents shortly after the meeting, the State Commissioner for Information, Comrade Ni Emamobong, said Governor Eno also urged them to ensure that every action of his government must have a human face, as humanity must be the central focus of this administration's business. According to him, ESCO, however, appreciated the support of all critical stakeholders during the just concluded Ibom dialogue and launch of Arise agenda, and reiterated their commitment to its implementation.
A pastor also needed to start with dedication. When we're done with that, His Excellency took time to admonish ESCO members, set some ground rules, and to charge ESCO members to be very serious. This is the beginning of an administration, and having chosen to begin with us, he expects to have double the mileage he would have had if he brought new people, because new people would have had to learn on the job. But almost everyone, except few changes, almost everyone had to go back to their ministry. So there is absolutely nothing to learn on the job other than to implement the new template, which is gleaned from the Arise agenda. And he charged that every item on the Arise agenda, which falls under our ministerial responsibility, must be handled according to the timelines and handled according to the objectives. He also insisted that every action of government must have a human face, that humanity must remain the central focus of the execution of government business.
Still to come in the news. Threads users down by more than a half. To stay with us. Many thanks for staying tuned. Now we'll move on to Africa, where Russia has signed agreements for military cooperation with over 40 African countries. Russian President Vladimir Putin announced this in St. Petersburg. President Putin made the announcement during the second and final day of the second Russia-Africa Summit. Representatives from African countries have been invited to actively participate in Russia-organized military forums dealing with the technical aspects of the weapons and also maneuvers to become familiar with the equipment and its use. Putin also announced that Russia would provide assistance to the countries in their efforts to free themselves from the vestiges of colonialism. The Kremlin leader reiterated that Russia would continue to be a reliable supplier of grain to the continent's countries. Still in Africa, the chief of the Niger Presidential Guard, General Abdulrahman Tiani, has been named president of the National Council for the Safeguard of the Homeland. Reports say Tiani was elected following a military takeover from President Mohamed Bazoum, who was allegedly detained by army putschists since Wednesday. In a related development, the Interior Ministry of Niger's new ruling junta has banned all public demonstrations after supporters of the coup set fire to ousted president's party headquarters. The small group of arsonists had broken away from a larger show of support for the coup leaders outside parliament. Reports say police fired tear gas to disperse those who had gone to PNDS Taraya party headquarters, where people were also stoning and burning cars. Meanwhile, Wagner mercenary boss Yevgeny Prigozhin has allegedly welcomed the military coup in Niger. According to an unverified audio message, Niger has been a key Western ally in the fight against Islamist militants in West Africa. The US and France, the former colonial power, both have military bases in the uranium-rich country. The unverified voice message from Prigozhin appeared on a Telegram app channel associated with the group, saying the takeover was long overdue. According to reports, the speaker had the same distinctive intonation and tone of phrase in Russian as the Wagner boss. Elsewhere, civil defense forces in Tunisia say wildfires, which spread across 5 provinces for several days, have now been brought under control. According to reports, more than 1,000 hectares of forest in the northwestern province of Gendoba have been destroyed. However, firefighters still remain on alert. Meanwhile, countries around the Mediterranean are counting the cost of a week of fires fueled by high temperatures. In Greece, emergency services have tried to prevent new flare-ups in the central area of Magnesia. Still in Africa, Kenya's Court of Appeal has lifted the suspension of a controversial finance law which has led to deadly unrests. The legislation, which allows the government to raise taxes, was frozen while a senator challenged its legality. It had been approved by President William Ruto in June and prompted demonstrations across Kenya. More than 30 people have died in clashes between police and protesters, who were mainly opposition supporters. The reports say the law raises the VAT on fuel products from 8% to 16%. It also introduces a 1.5% housing tax. Meanwhile, the ruling is likely to trigger further protests led by veteran opposition leader Raila Odinga. Now, the Democratic Republic of Congo has accused Rwandan soldiers of crossing into its territory. The Congolese army issued a statement describing the alleged incursion into North Kivu province as an intolerable provocation. It said the Rwandan soldiers had been forced back across the border. There has been no word from Rwanda. Meanwhile, it has previously denied accusations by the DR Congo government that it backs a rebel group known as M23, which has carried out numerous attacks in eastern DR Congo. In the meantime, Army sources have confirmed that paramilitary fighters have destroyed 3 military jets at the Wadi Saidna Air Base north of the capital Khartoum. Reports say the airfield is used by the military to carry out airstrikes on the Rapid Support Forces (RSF), whose troops have bases in many residential areas of the 3 cities that make up Greater Khartoum, Bari, Khartoum and Omdurman, which lie on the banks of the Nile River. The Wadi Saidna Air Base was also used by foreign governments to evacuate their nationals not long after the brutal power struggle between the military and RSF erupted in mid-April. It is the first major assault by the RSF on the army in several weeks. The lull in the attacks has coincided with a trip made by the deputy leader of the RSF to Chad and several other countries to drum up support. On the foreign scene, former U.S. President Donald Trump has faced fresh charges alleging that he attempted to obstruct the investigation into the mishandling of top-secret documents by conspiring to delete surveillance footage at his Mar-a-Lago property in Florida. Reports say federal prosecutors unsealed the new indictment targeting the front-runner in the 2024 Republican presidential primary, who is set to go on trial as the election heats up in May of next year. Recall that the twice impeached former president was first indicted in the classified documents case last month, allegedly accused of endangering national security by holding on to top-secret nuclear and defense information after leaving the White House. Still on the foreign scene, former U.S. President Donald Trump said he would not end his run for the White House if he were convicted and sentenced in any of the criminal investigations mounted against him. The 77-year-old Republican frontrunner was asked about his reaction to the federal and state charges he faces as he bids for a second term in 2024, a day after federal prosecutors added 3 felony counts to the indictment against him over his handling of classified documents. Trump said previous presidents, including Barack Obama and George W. Bush, took documents suggesting falsely that his predecessors had engaged in conduct similar to the alleged crimes for which he has been charged. The twice impeached former president was first indicted in the classified documents case last month, accused of endangering national security by holding on to top-secret nuclear and defense information after leaving the White House. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron has declined to condemn the country's top police chiefs for appearing to suggest officers were above the law, seeking to stave off unrest among security forces wearied by repeated bouts of street violence. Critics, however, lament a missed opportunity to reassert the state's authority over an increasingly restless police force. Just weeks after the police killing of 17-year-old Nahel M. kicked off massive riots across France, the country's top police official sparked a fresh row on Sunday by slamming the decision to jail an officer whose actions during the unrest are being investigated. Reports say the controversial remarks by National Police Chief Frédéric Gouvox were aimed at staving off a revolt in the southern city of Marseille, where officers have staged a rare walkout in protest at a court's decision to remand one of their colleagues in custody. Meanwhile, the jailed policeman is one of 4 officers placed under investigation over the alleged beating of a 21-year-old man of North African origin who has undergone multiple surgical procedures and had part of his skull removed after what he said was a deliberate attack by police using an LBD blast ball gun. In a related development, France's President Emmanuel Macron stripped off his suit jacket yesterday to wander the wild forests of Papua New Guinea on a green-tinted charm offensive in the South Pacific. Macron is telling Pacific leaders that France understands the threat they face from a warming Earth, from rising seas swamping low-lying islands to a loss of wildlife, wilder weather and the financial costs they impose. It is a message he has already pushed on his first two Pacific stops, on the eroded coastline of the French territory of New Caledonia and in the sea-threatened archipelago of Vanuatu, where he joined a call for the phasing out of fossil fuels. Reports say in Papua New Guinea, Macron wore no jacket and at one point no tie, as he walked 2 kilometers, more than a mile, with Prime Minister James Marape through the Loch Varirata National Park, touting a French initiative to remunerate countries that preserve their old-growth forests. In the meantime, environment ministers from G20 nations have failed to agree on peaking global emissions by 2025 and other crucial issues to address the global climate crisis at their meeting in India. Speaking with newsmen after the meeting, France's Ecological Transition Minister Christophe Béchu said they were not able to reach an agreement of increasing drastically renewable energies, on phasing out or down fossil fuels, especially coal. He added that the discussions with China, Saudi Arabia and Russia on climate issues had been complicated and that no breakthrough was possible on several key points ahead of this year's COP28 climate talks. Recall that Chennai meeting comes days after energy ministers from the bloc, which represents more than 80% of global GDP and CO2 emissions, failed to agree on a roadmap to cut fossil fuels from the global energy mix. Meanwhile, Adnan Amin, chief executive of this year's COP28 climate talks, told newsmen that all present at the conference understood the severity of the crisis facing the world. Still on the foreign scene now, United Nations and European Union monitors have said that July is set to be the hottest month in recorded history and likely unprecedented for thousands of years, warning that it is a taste of the world's climate future. Reports say searing heat intensified by global warming has baked parts of Europe, Asia and North America this month, combining with wildfires that have scorched across Canada and parts of southern Europe. The UN chief Antonio Guterres, while commenting on the heat wave, said the era of global warming has ended and the era of global boiling has arrived. Meanwhile, the director of C3S, Carlo Buontempo, said the temperatures in the period had been remarkable, with an anomaly so large that scientists are confident that the record has been shattered even before the end of the month.
Climate change is here, it is terrifying, and it is just the beginning. The era of global warming has ended, the era of global boiling has arrived. The air is unbreathable, the heat is unbearable. No more hesitancy, no more excuses, no more waiting for the others to move first. There is simply no more time for that. It is still possible to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius and avoid the very worst of climate change, but only.
Elsewhere, passengers were evacuated from the North Terminal of London Gatwick Airport following a fire alarm yesterday. Photos and videos shared on Twitter, which is being rebranded as X, show crowds of passengers clustered outside the building. Responding to tweets from concerned individuals, the airport, amid apologies, stated that passengers would be processed through security as promptly as possible. It noted that the departure lounge was evacuated for a short time as a result of the fire alarm. Now in business, Meta boss Mark Zuckerberg says its new social media platform Threads has lost more than half its users. Earlier this month, the Twitter rival rose to more than 100 million users within 5 days of its launch. However, Zuckerberg acknowledged that those numbers have tumbled. According to reports, he described the situation as normal and said he anticipated retention to improve as new features were added to the app. Away from that, Zimbabwe's annual consumer inflation eased sharply to 101.3% in July 2023 from a nearly 2-to-1 two-year high of 175.8% in June, helped by an appreciation of the Zimbabwean dollar. Inflation is a general increase in prices and fall in the purchasing value of money. On a monthly basis, prices fell by 15.3%, marking the lowest reading since at least 2009 to 53% rebound in local currency against the greenback. A new rule required corporate taxes to be settled in the local unit and the loosening of foreign exchange controls. The Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe raised its key lending rate on June 6 by 10 percentage points to 150% in a bid to tame cost growth. Also, the central bank stopped the free floating of the Zimbabwean dollar to reduce volatility and erase the gap between the official and black market rates. Still to come in the news. Red Bull's Max Verstappen to have 5-place grid penalty for Belgium GP. Let's start with this.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people, but there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people, but there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Every society is premised on the quality of relationships forged by its inhabitants. The health of these relationships determines how well people, relationships, organizations thrive and how long they stick together. Join Uyai Anyekan on Connect every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. and on Sunday 2:30 to 3 p.m. on channel 421 on StarTimes to catch all the conversations, interviews, real stories and how to navigate relationships and family life in the 21st century. Real people, real faces, real stories. Connect live on Spectrum Television.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the Constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the Matters Council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but you can't be talking about cases which are in court,
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Many thanks for staying tuned. Now in health, the World Health Organization has raised the alarm that viral hepatitis could kill more people than malaria, tuberculosis and HIV combined by 2040 if the current infection rate continues. According to WHO, hepatitis causes liver damage and cancer and kills over 1 million people annually. Of the 5 types of hepatitis infections, hepatitis B and C cause most of the disease and deaths. WHO made this known in a statement it issued as the global health body joined the rest of the world to celebrate the 2023 World Hepatitis Day, themed One Life, One Liver. The health organization noted that while hepatitis C could be cured, only 21% of the people living with the infection are diagnosed, and only 13% have received curative treatment. WHO added that only 10% of people living with chronic hepatitis B are diagnosed and only 2% of those infected are receiving life-saving medicine. Still in health, the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control (NAFDAC) says it seized products worth more than 10 million naira at hawkers and illegal drug sellers' outlets in some parts of Kaduna State. NAFDAC's Deputy Director, Investigation and Enforcement, Pharmaceutical Enforcement Directorate, Kaduna State, Tamanuwa Andrew Baba, made the disclosure in Kaduna. He explained that the raid was conducted to clear out hawkers on the streets, motor parks and around worship centers, adding that its operatives arrested 6 suspects. And Andrew Baba added that the raid was conducted following the media sensitization campaign on the dangers of drug hawking and ripening of fruits with calcium carbide, which began 2 weeks ago. Now in sports, Red Bull's Max Verstappen will have a 5-place grid penalty for the Belgian Grand Prix as a result of using too many gearbox parts. The punishment will apply for Sunday's Grand Prix and not Saturday's sprint. The penalty has not been officially confirmed, but media has verified it with senior figures in Red Bull. The Dutchman, who is leading the championship by 110 points after winning 9 of the 11 races so far in 2023, is on a run of 7 consecutive Grand Prix victories, 2 short of the all-time record in a season set by Sebastian Vettel for Red Bull in 2013. And at last weekend's Hungarian Grand Prix, Red Bull won their 12th consecutive Formula One championship race, breaking a record held by McLaren since 1988. Although the penalty will mean Verstappen will start behind at least 5 other cars, he won last year's Belgian Grand Prix from 14th on the grid in arguably the most dominant performance since the start of Formula One's new regulations introduced in 2022. Nigeria's senior women's basketball team, the Tigers, started their campaign in the 2023 FIBA Women's Afro-Basketball Championship in Kigali, Rwanda, on a strong note. The team, under the tutelage of Reno Wakama, arrived in Kigali for the championship a few days ago to defend their title. They started the opening game against DR Congo like a house on fire, winning the first quarter 16-8. They continued their dominance in the second quarter, and they were able to check the attacking threat of the Congolese by winning 29-18. The Tigers proved too much for the DR Congo team as they moved out of sight in the third quarter with a comprehensive 46-32. The Nigerian side wrapped up the final quarter with another captivating performance and secured an emphatic 69-35 victory. So in sports, Anthony Okachi has linked up with Nigeria Premier League champions Enyimba Okachi, who completed his medicals on Friday morning, signed a 2-year contract with the People's Elephant. The 22-year-old will earn 500,000 naira monthly and also receive 3 million naira sign-on fee. The forward will help boost Enyimba's attack following the departure of last season's top scorer Chukwuemeka Obioma. Okachi was in the books of Shooting Star Sports Club of Ibadan last season. He once featured for Abia Comets in the Nigerian National League. Away from that, Turkey has requested to merge its bid to host Euro 2032 with Italy, potentially boosting the UK and Republic of Ireland's chances of hosting the tournament in 2028. While Italy had only bid for the 2032 tournament, Turkey had bid to host both Euro 2028 and 2032. Turkey's solo bid for 2028 remains as a rival to the UK and Republic of Ireland's 5-nation bid. UEFA will choose the hosts for both tournaments on 10th October. And on entertainment news, Nigerian comedian Otawari Otaz Onojayeke, popularly known as by his stage name Igosave, has asserted that the fame of a skit maker is ephemeral. He said, unlike stand-up comedians, most skit makers lack longevity in the entertainment industry. The comic star made the assertion while appearing as a guest on the latest episode of the Honest Bunch podcast, co-hosted by actor Nedu. When AXTV agrees that skit making is now overshadowing stand-up comedy, Agazev said, once one starts skit making, one erupts like volcano. But in his opinion, the lifespan is short. Away from that, the Nigerian police have condemned what they described as a derogatory portrayal of the police uniform in comedy skits by a former naval officer and skit maker, Abdul Ghaffar Abiola, popularly known as Cute Abiola. The police said the skit maker portrayed the force in a bad light in 2 recent skits posted on his social media handles on July 20 and 24, 2023. This was contained in a statement released by the Force Public Relations Officer Olumuyiwa Adejobi on Thursday. In a separate story, legendary American singer and record producer Pharrell Williams has showered kind words on Nigerian singer Adekunle Gold, describing him as blessed and favored. The 50-year-old hip-hop mogul said Adekunle Gold will continue to rise against the wishes of his foes. Pharrell Williams is one of the guest artists featured in Adekunle Gold's upcoming album, Tequila Ever After. And finally, on entertainment, the crown gold ring worn by the late American rapper and actor Tupac Amaru Shakur was sold for $1 million in a New York auction on Tuesday. The ring was worn by the late singer during his last public appearance at the MTV Video Music Awards in September 1996. Tupac's godmother, Yasmin Fuller, while providing the ring to the auction house, stated that the ring, which bears the Park and Data 1996 inscription on its side, was designed for him in New York City after his release from jail and his signing with Death Row Records. The auction house said the ring, which is made of gold, rubies and diamond crowns, became the most valuable hip-hop artifact ever sold, according to media reports. Tupac was shot dead at age 25 on September 13, 1996 by an unidentified assailant in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas. And that's all we have for you at this time. Do ensure to follow us at social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, SpectrumTv.ng. You've been watching Spectrum News. My name is Xavier Robert. Bye for now.